Intro has started. Stand by for countdown. "30 away." 20. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
Good morning and welcome to the Wednesday, March 9, 2022 Board of County Commissioners meeting. I am Nicole Gibbs. I'm the Community Relations Specialist for the county. This week is Severe Weather Preparedness Week. This week is a nationwide effort designed to increase awareness of the severe weather that affects everyone and to know their risks and take action. Here today is Julie Simpson, Director of Emergency Management, to talk more about the week. Julie?
Good morning, Julie.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. As Nicole said, this week is Severe Weather Preparedness Week. Yesterday, the tornado drill caught quite the attention. I was very encouraged to hear a lot of businesses and a lot of folks did participate and talked about their tornado safety plans, which was really encouraging. We had some reports of some sirens that need some help out there, so we're going to be working on getting our system kind of where we want it to be. So this week is spread out through different topics. Monday we were talking about preparedness and what to do to be ready for severe weather season. Yesterday was tornado safety. Today we talk about lightning. Thursday is wind and hail. And then Friday is floods. I know there's a lot of discussion about, Tornado Alley shifting to the east and we're not as active as we once were. And although that may be true, we still have the threat of tornadoes. We still want folks to take the threat seriously and to prepare for the severe weather that we do still anticipate receiving here in Kansas. So I have a map of the 2021 tornadoes just for reference. We did have some tornadoes last year. So again, just emphasizing the fact that they still happen. It just takes one storm, so we still want folks to take the threat very serious. A key point we want to stress this week is making sure you have multiple sources to receive information for severe weather. Not one part of this layer is 100%. Just recent tornadoes in Iowa proved that cell phone systems were delayed due to some glitches in software. So again, emphasizing the importance of having multiple means. So local TV and radio, and they've been doing a fantastic job this week too, pushing out information for severe weather preparedness. NOAA Weather Radio is always our number one push. NOAA Weather Radios will communicate the severe weather. Phone and tablets, and we do have a county emergency log on our webpage that's open to the public, so if there is severe weather, we document a sequence of events and things that are going on that e-log. And then, of course, we have the outdoor warning devices that are meant to warn those who are outside that may be away from technology. So again, having more than one way to receive warnings is our key message. Real brief, I just wanted to talk about the difference between watches and warnings. We have watches, it just means the conditions are favorable. That's when we start paying attention, watching the skies, making sure our NOAA weather radios are charged and plugged in. And warnings mean take action. That means things are happening. We need you most likely to get underground if we're talking about a tornado warning. Some things to plan for disruptions. This is the key message too, is plan ahead now. No matter if it's a severe thunderstorm or if it's a tornado, a lot of times we have utility failures with power, electricity, gas, water. Those are the things we need to prepare our households for. How do we handle those type of disruptions? Communications. If we're not able to communicate, how are you physically going to communicate with loved ones? Preparing for delayed emergency response and preparing for food, water, and fuel shortages. Already talked about emergency alerts. Safe shelter, that's another key point too, knowing where the safe shelters are for tornadoes, underground or the most interior room on the lowest level. And how do you communicate with family and households? Cell phones may not work. If your phone is damaged, do you have a list of phone numbers where you can reference to call your loved ones? If someone does offer you their cell phone, do you have phone numbers that you want to call? And then what supplies do you need to get through those first several hours after a disaster response, considering your children, pets, and any kind of special accommodations that you may need. So we do have checklists. We have templates available on ready.gov as well as the Sedgwick County Emergency Management webpage to help folks kind of go through some of the items that we recommend for household preparedness. And then I just want to advertise tonight we have a public severe weather safety program at Northwest High School at 6:30 to 8:30. The National Weather Service in emergency management will be out there to discuss severe weather safety. We'll have some templates and guides like I was just talking about with a disaster preparedness checklist. And we encourage anyone to come out who may be free this afternoon or this evening for a couple of hours.
Well, thank you, Julie. Thanks for bringing those life-saving recommendations to our community.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Julie. Taking a look at today's meeting, there's a resolution to appoint Joe Brown to the District 3 Citizens Advisory Board, a capital campaign funding agreement with the Kansas African American Museum, a resolution to adopt the Stepping Up Initiative, a report of the Board of Bids and Contracts, and a discussion on the task force. With that, Chairman, I turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I want to welcome everyone that's in the audience today, everyone that's joining us online and on KPTS today. I want to add one thing, is that we are going to add an off-agenda item as we start new business today to discuss a letter of support for WSU. So with that, I would like to call the meeting to order for March the 9th, 2022. Mr. Clerk, next item, please.
Invocation to be led by Pastor Ron Proct, Olivet Baptist Church. Please remain standing for the flag salute.
Father, we come before you this morning on behalf of our Board of Commissioners. We ask you to give them wisdom, discernment, and courage to make the decisions necessary to provide the safety and direction for the citizens who elected them to represent us in this important civic responsibility. And we thank you for their willingness to serve. We pray that they would have wisdom as they consider the items presented for their decisions today. We ask that you give them your perspective on how to best serve the people of our county, even those who politically may disagree with them and may be opposed to their ideas. Give them courage to speak their convictions while honoring those whose convictions might be in conflict. Help them respond to questions from the citizens they represent with honesty and openness, and help the commissioners speak with wisdom and respect as they discuss the items on today's agenda. Help them handle with grace and respect any harsh words directed at them, but I pray for those who might speak to this body to give them courage to speak with respect and politeness, because we're neighbors and live in this community together. We pray for unity, even in the diversity of opinions held by the commissioners and those who would address us this morning. We pray for those in our community who are the most vulnerable, especially in the days of higher fuel and food costs. We pray that you protect them and those who serve them. We ask for your presence with our first responders. Thank you for the men and women who go to the crisis rather than run away from it. We pray for their protection as they provide services to the people in our community. We ask, Father, that you give our leaders locally, statewide, and nationally courage of their convictions, and at the same time a gentleness to those who hold different opinions and beliefs. Teach us to speak words that heal and build up rather than ostracize and tear down. This morning, Father, we pray specifically and especially for those in Ukraine as they face the horrific attacks on their nation. We pray for protection for the innocent among them, the women, children, and the elderly. We ask for your restraining hand against those who wage war against them. We pray for wisdom for our international leaders as they confront this aggression, and pray for courage to deal with those who kill innocent people. As we read the stories coming from the conflict, give us compassionate hearts for those most affected, and give us gratitude for the blessings we have to live here in the United States. Father, we ask that you show us how to serve the people of Ukraine in these difficult days. I pray these things in the name of the one who created all things, Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pastor, thank you very much for being here today, and thanks for those words. We appreciate it. Next item, please.
Roll call. Commissioner Meitzner. Present. Commissioner Cruz. Present. Commissioner Howell.
Present.
Commissioner Dennett. Commissioner Lopez.
Present.
Chairman Dennis.
Present. Next item, please.
Public agenda.
Commissioners, we did not have anyone sign up on line tonight, or last night. We have one signed up to speak today. Mr. James Barfield is back with us today. Welcome, sir. Please state your name for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. At this time yesterday morning, I had no intention to be here. However, upon going to my post office box yesterday, I received another unsolicited letter regarding the September 24th incident at DOC. Now, I'm not a part of the task force. I have no dog in this fight whatsoever. And I'm questioning, why am I getting these letters unsolicited? And I think it's because, as I said the last time I was here, 1 month ago today, that these problems, when they reach the magnitude is what they have reached to cause the incident of September 24th to happen, does not start at the bottom of the food chain. It starts at the top. And this letter writer, and I have no idea who it is, like I said, this was unsolicited, and I don't know if it's a male or female. There's no return address or anything on here. But this letter kind of supports what I have said. And this letter is from a former DOC employee. And this writer actually talks about the problems not being at the bottom of the food chain, but rather at the top of the food chain. And there's also a cover letter here, and I'm going to take a minute and read the cover letter, and then I'm not going to read all of the letter because it's 6 pages long, but I'm going to read the cover letter, and then I'm going to read parts of the other 6 pages. It says here that I was asked to watch the commission meeting on February the 9th, 2022. After listening to Mr. Barfield read the letter written by a Sedgwick County employee, I knew I had to resubmit this letter to Commissioner Lacey Cruz and Mr. Barfield. This was not a coincidence that this behavior with the Sedgwick County DOC was not investigated. My hope is that no commissioner was informed of this letter and decided to keep it to themselves. There are so many other employees out there that have a story to tell, but will not do so due to fears of retaliation by upper management. Until the county accepts responsibility for how they allow upper management and supervisors to treat their staff, another incident will occur. Employees don't leave their home to work a shift only to be mistreated by an adult that does not know how to professionally do their job. A change will have to take place for the county to keep good workers. DOC management needs to be changed. Now to get to the letter. I'm writing you regarding the incident that took place at the Juvenile Intake and Assessment Center on September 24th, 2021. The timeline has been provided to the public many times. Each time it states that the foster dad asked for help because his foster son, Cedric Lofton, was having a mental crisis. Wichita Police Department were called out to help with the problem. The foster dad seemed to have wanted a mental health evaluation done, but due to the lack of missing information in what took place at the home and between the time Cedric Lofton arrived at JIAC, the family and the public may never know the truth. It has been relayed to the public that Cedric resisted arrest, and according to the police, it was deemed he needed to be placed in a body wrap. When a person is placed in a body wrap, it is usually when they are non-compliant, refusing every command, or just for the safety of that person. We all know if a person is resisting arrest, they are not going to lie down and allow an officer or officers to place them in a body wrap where they are constricted from any movement. So as a recent former employee of the Department of Corrections, I know all too well, along with current employees, how things are handled by Wichita police officers when they think they will have to take a youth to the hospital. Hours are taken away from their daily work to sit with the youth they have no interest in and can care less about their mental stability at that time. This is where the problem comes in. Wichita police officers did not want to take Sedgwick to be evaluated and needed a reason to say that he resisted so they could bypass the hospital and charge Sedgwick with resisting arrest. Let's now back up to the morning Sedgwick was placed in a wrap. It usually takes more than a few officers to control a youth/adult. So how did they get Sedgwick in the wrap? Did they hold him down and place their knee on him and cause damage to his kidneys? Did they throw him down and hit his head on the ground and cause his brain injury? Where are the body cameras from the Wichita Police Department? At what part do they take responsibility for their actions? Could Sedgwick have received a head injury by the officers that placed him in the wrap? Moving forward to the Juvenile Intake and Assessment Center, Sedgwick may have already been injured before his arrival. And the restraints the correctional officers placed him in may have just exacerbated the injuries prior to his arrival. I do think that the correctional officers should not have all the publicity placed on them. Let's keep the door open to questions unanswered. I am in no way diminishing the death of this young man. I take his death as a great loss to this young man's family and to all that knew him. In recent months, all over the United States, we have seen the gross negligence and systemic cover-up that occur in many police departments and detention facilities. The Wichita Police Department is no exception to this rule. Sedgwick County Department of Corrections needs new leadership. It's time to uncover the history of what takes place in some of these departments. It's time for some leadership changes in the DOC. Current leadership has failed miserably multiple times, and most of it has fallen on the employees. These problems will only continue to worsen. DOC workers are leaving in high numbers, and most of them have left, except in positions within the state of Kansas. Administration would have you believe that they left for money, but that is not true. The workers left due to the behaviors of supervisors and upper management. The county commissioners have no idea what kind of leadership management they have on their hands. If only these walls could talk. They would be appalled by what behaviors that are on full display from the people they call great. Who they see is not who the employees at DOC sees. Let's begin with how the workers are treated throughout the facilities. Supervisors do not know how to treat their workers fairly. When situations arise and the supervisor is fond of the employees, they don't address the problem. If they're not fond of the employees, they're given a reprimand, a verbal coaching, or terminated. Upper management does not take into consideration staff's workload. There is a shortage of staff at each facility. Management continues to bully staff by first requesting you volunteer your time. In some instances, they will request you work alone, leave your unassigned placement during your work hours so overtime is not required, reassign you or tell you before you leave work for the day that you cannot leave due to mandatory overtime, causing stress on the worker and their families. They never take any consideration staff's feelings when this is done. The juvenile detention facility is in dire need of help. Workers from other facilities have been assigned to work at JDF after having 1 day of cross-training or no training at all. These workers are left in a pod or JDF to watch kids that act out, use profanity, attack staff, along with the kids that are COVID positive. Staff shortages are also taking place at the Juvenile Intake Assessment, Juvenile Residential Facility, and the Adult Residential Facility. This is very stressful for staff, and management does not seem to care about the welfare of their employees and the mistreatment of staff by supervisors. And in no way do these uninformative supervisors trainings help when you're dealing with an untrainable individual. Now let's investigate upper management and some of the supervisors within these facilities. And they go on to, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into all of this. I'm going to save us time. I'm just going to call the names of upper management that they allude to here as being part of the problem. Number one, Glenda Martins, who I believe is probably no longer employed by the Sedgwick County. Number two is Steve Stonehouse, Deputy Director. Number three is Stephanie Lane, JDF Coordinator. Number four is Chris Collins Tolman, Administrative and Training Coordinator. And then Ben Hopper, the JDF Corrections Coordinator. Jody Transgard, I believe it is, Program Director. Alex Alba, and I believe that's all. Now, let's hope this bringing attention to the problem brings about a change for DOC employees that is greatly deserved. I can honestly say I did enjoy my years working for DOC and made many lifelong friendships. But as mentioned above, they need to reach deep inside to destroy the root of this behavior that has taken place for so long. Leadership needs reconstruction. HR is not designed for the employees. Many staff have spoken with HR with their concerns only to be retaliated against by upper management or supervisors. Bringing in an outside agency to figure out the problem is the problem. This happened at the end of last year and nothing changed. Staff concerns were not addressed, and at the meeting to talk about the findings, the major concerns were never mentioned, nor were the supervisors addressed. They continue to treat others with the mindset business as usual. Sedgwick County will continue to have these types of unfortunate happenings, short staff shortages, and underpaid staff until leadership steps up and treat their employees with the respect that they deserve. Now, that concludes the letter, and I just want to make a couple of quick comments. It appears to me that there is some division amongst you commissioners about whether or not you want a review or you want an investigation. And I want to tell you, there are some people here that want to talk, but they're not going to talk to your task force, and they're not going to talk to you for two reasons. Number one, fear of retaliation, okay? And so therefore, you're never going to get to the truth or the bottom of this matter when you have a task force that has its hands tied and cannot talk to these people or any other employees. You have to have an investigation, not a review, if you really want to get to the truth of this matter. Now, I'm at this point unclear whether or not you guys really want to get to the truth of it. I think you want to get this off the 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock news, and you want to get it off the front pages of the papers, but I'm not so sure you really want the truth. And if you do, stop sending mixed signals, because that's what the people that want to talk and have something to say, that's the way they feel. They're getting mixed signals, and they're not going to come forward, put their jobs on the line, put their reputation on the line, as long as that exists.
Thank you, Mr. Barfield. Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, James, for being here today. I did receive the letter.
Okay?
I scanned it in. I had a conversation with our county manager about it. I sent it to him as well. I also sent it to my colleague, Commissioner Howell. We'll be meeting about it tomorrow. I do want to get to the truth. I do want to see an investigation. I do want to create and give clear signals, because this is very important to a lot of people who are paying attention, as long as it's it's just very important. And so I want to make myself clear that whoever did write this letter, if you would like to have a conversation, you will remain confidential if that's what you so desire. I appreciate you paying attention to this, coming here today, reading the parts of this letter, and I know that we're having a conversation about the task force later. I don't know if you can stick around because that is on our agenda, and so I'd like to address that portion at the appropriate time. But I did want to address you now and let you know that I did receive this, and I have forwarded on to management, and I will be talking about it with my colleague later this week.
Okay, ma'am, I have no problem with anything you just said. The only problem I have is the feeling that you just expressed is not mutual among the five of you, and that means that you're sending mixed signals. When two or three of you have one opinion or one idea, and the other two or three don't have that same idea, that sends mixed signals to people that, as I stated, have valuable information. Now, in any crime situation, the first thing the police want to do is talk to the witnesses that have some skin in the game. That means people that have been in that. Now, these people that want to talk, they might not have conclusive evidence regarding to Sedgwick Lofton, but they can provide you with information as to what goes on a day-to-day basis at that facility. And that's what you need to hear. You need to hear from those people, not somebody, that basically was just walking by or was leaving or was on the way. These people have day-to-day experiences with GIAC staff. They witness on a day-to-day basis what goes on, something you don't know and I don't know. I think you would want to avail yourself to that kind of information.
Thank you, Mr. Barfield. I don't see any other questions. I move to receive and file. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Thank you. Next item, please.
Appointments. Item A, resolution appointing Joe Brown to the Sedgwick County District 3 Citizens Advisory Board.
Mr. Papoon.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Mike Papoon, County Councilor. The first appointment and only appointment today is the appointment of Joe Brown to your Citizens Advisory Board. Prepared a resolution. It's in proper form. Ask you to approve the resolution.
Thank you, sir. Well, I've known Joe Brown for some time. He served on the Aging Advisory Council, actually the chairman of that for a period of time, and he has now volunteered to come over and serve on my Citizens Advisory Board, and I appreciate that very much. I move that we appoint Joe Brown for the District 3 Citizens Advisory Board. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Congratulations, and you'll get sworn in now, and we'll give you an opportunity to say a few words.
Just want to express my appreciation, the opportunity to serve our community. We have a great community, and thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just say it to you and get that. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Kansas, and faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Sedgwick County 3rd District Citizens Advisory Board, so help me God.
May God, I do. Congratulations. Thank you, sir.
Again, thank you, Joe, and welcome to the Citizens Advisory Board. Mr. Clerk, next item, please.
New business.
New business, move that we add an off-agenda item to discuss a letter of support to Wichita State University. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. And we have Brent Shelton here today to brief us on the letter. We've all received a copy of the letter yesterday, and there have been just a couple of minor changes to it. So, Brent, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chairman Dennis. Commissioners, for the record, I'm Brent Shelton, your Deputy CFO. This item for your consideration is a request for a letter, which would be signed by all commissioners, supporting Wichita State University and their application for a Build Back Better Regional Challenge Grant through the United States Economic Development Administration. Wichita State is submitting their application this week as one of 60 finalists for grants that will be between $25 and $100 million. There was a $1 billion allocation for this Build Back Better Regional Challenge, and it's the premier grant program to the Economic Development Administration, part of their ARPA funding. This program aims to boost economic recovery from the pandemic and rebuild America's communities. What this challenge will provide for is funding for transformational investments to develop and strengthen regional industry clusters across the country, promoting economic growth, good-paying jobs, and enhancing U.S. global competitiveness. As I mentioned before, Wichita State is one of 60 finalists. There were 529 original applications. 5 of those came from the state of Kansas. There's one remaining from the state of Kansas, and that's the one that we're discussing this morning. On December 30th, of last year, the EDA announced these 60 Phase 1 finalists. They were each awarded approximately $500,000 to further develop the programs for which they were submitting the applications. The application from Wichita State and the South Kansas Coalition that would be driving this is called Driving Adoption, Smart Manufacturing Technologies. If I paraphrase, the vision for this effort is basically to empower equitable adoption of emerging technologies for sustainable precision manufacturing, enhancing competitiveness and profitability. Now, this is for all manufacturers in the region, but they do have some specific projects to make this available to small and medium-sized firms that may not have the capital to access this technology. It also includes a workforce expansion component, construction of an 80,000 square foot facility at NCAT for advanced manufacturing training, education, and research. The letter of support before you outlines the rich entrepreneurial and manufacturing history of this region and the county's historic and current support of these efforts, beginning with NCAT and as recent as your financial support for the industry-driven research and for the future of smart manufacturing and those workforce needs. Some of the initial outcomes of that research have laid the foundation and are shaping the application that this letter would support. So I would request this morning that you approve the letter of support for that application, authorize the members of the Board of County Commission to sign the letter. I will stand for questions.
Well, thank you very much. I don't see any questions at this time. We were briefed on it yesterday. I think there is support among the commission, so I move that we approve the letter, have each one of us sign it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Commissioner Howell, did you have a question?
No, I did not. Hit the wrong button. That's all.
No problem. All right. Thank you, Brent. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Clerk, next item, please.
Item B, Capital Campaign Funding Agreement with the Kansas African American Museum.
Morning, Tim.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Tim Kaufman, Deputy County Manager for Public Services. I'm here this morning to highlight one of Sedgwick County's many successful public-private partnerships. The Kansas African American Museum is a premier place where communities can come to learn about and tell the Kansas African American story. Located in the historic former Calvary Baptist Church, they have excelled in educating all ages about the African American experience. Sedgwick County has had a long-standing partnership with TCAM, including an operational funding agreement. But their continued success has identified a need for different space to allow them to better share their collections and provide programming. After a strategic planning process, they began their capital campaign. Sedgwick County is proud to be given the opportunity to extend our partnership in this way. The contract before you represents a total pledge of $450,000 being paid out over 5 years between 2022 and 2026. My request is that you approve the contract and authorize the chair to sign. And I'd also like to recognize some of our friends from TCAM that are here today. Denise Sherman, the Executive Director of the Museum, and Ted Ayers, a past president of the board. I'd like to invite Denise to the podium to say a few words.
Good morning, Ms. Sherman.
Good morning. Good morning, Commissioner Chair David Dennis, Commissioners Cruz, Howell, Lopez, and Meitzner. Thank you for the continuous support, encouragement, and confidence in the Kansas African American Museum. We continue to work toward mission fulfillment and to serve our community. We have made significant progress in our work to create a new museum and cultural center, and we expect to make a formal announcement this summer on our progress. Again, we appreciate and are very thankful for all you do to support the museum.
Thank you. Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Denise, for being here today. Thank you, Ted, for being here. As I serve on this board, I have been delighted it's a fun one. I serve on a lot of boards, and this one is fun. You guys talk about all the upcoming events that I hope to get to soon. There's one coming up this weekend, or this week.
That's correct.
And Ebony Clemens, current President John Rolfe. It's been really nice to see the dedication and effort that you guys put in. I know this is a ton of hours. You spend multiple hours a week working on this, and I can't wait for the announcement to come up. So with that, Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the agreement and authorize the chairman to sign.
Thank you. I'll second that. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple questions and comments, but in the contract, as I'm reading the contract, this is towards a capital campaign to get a new building, and you plan to announce something this summer. I assume it's probably about that, but is there any obligation for you to actually exercise success in getting that new facility to get the remaining years of support? This is a 5-year agreement. And so I don't know when you plan to make that move, but if let's say it's a year or two down the road and there's some type of let's say a loan it's in place for TCAM to do that. I assume that this money would go to pay off those obligations at that time. But I'm just curious, though, is there any type of time frame in terms of exercising a move from the current location to a new location for you to exercise a full 5-year agreement?
Chairman, this contract is similar to many other capital campaign commitments that we've made. It's a term of 5 years to allow us to spread the payments out, and it's in anticipation of the museum using the money that in this contract towards that capital campaign.
I guess what I'm saying is they need to exercise success on their vision to do that. And if they, for some reason, choose not to go down that path, the remaining funds here are contingent on moving towards a new building someplace.
Correct, but it's a pledge towards that capital campaign that's paid out over 5 years rather than paying the full amount this first year.
I understand that part. I guess what I'm sorry, I hate to repeat my question again. This is a 5-year agreement, and I don't know if it will take them 5 years to get to that new building. I hope not. I hope they can do that much sooner than that. And so at some point, let's say in the next year or two, let's say they move to a new building, then they've done their part. They get the full 5 years of support. But let's say during the next couple of years, they change horses. They decide not to go down this path. Are we still obligated to the full 5-year agreement if they don't continue their effort to move to a new building?
I would say that we are, because we're in partnership with them along with the other donors that they're going to receive funding from for this capital campaign. If we were to have made a full pledge payment this year in 2022, the $450,000, the expectation would be that TCAM would use that money towards their capital campaign in the future. It may happen in a year or two. It may take them the full 5 years. We don't anticipate that, and I'm certainly not going to speak on their behalf, but our commitment is to the organization for that $450,000 amount.
I think that, and I'm going to look at Mike on this, I don't know that there are benchmarks in this contract. I think that's what you're asking, Commissioner. Are there benchmarks year to year to show progress, and if those benchmarks are not met, does that somehow null and void the contract?
That's kind of my question, yeah.
Mike, do you have any?
I mean, there is, I just looked briefly, and I believe
Chelsea's here, yeah. Chelsea's here. She'll come up.
worked on it. Looking at the contract, I know there's a termination for breach of the agreement, so obviously that would include that sort of a situation of not meeting benchmarks, but we just don't get into that situation in these kinds of agreements, Commissioners. Generally, these organizations follow through. Go ahead, Chelsea.
Good morning, Commissioners. Chelsea Anderson, Assistant County Counselor. My understanding was that this was agreed upon by the Commissioners at the August 25th meeting. There was no stipulations that I was aware of. So no, there's nothing that would say that we are not going to give them this money if they don't get a building or do. We can certainly look into adding something like that if that's the will of the Commissioners, but my understanding was that we were pledging this money for their capital improvements for them. Obviously, the plan, I believe, was to move forward with a new building, but I don't believe there were any stipulations on how they would go about that.
Okay. I'll just state publicly, I think that there needs to be, I think the contract is probably going to move forward today, but I do wish there was some type of protection built into this, that as long as we're moving towards that goal, this is a good contract. But if for some reason they never to change their mind and not go in that direction, then I think we need to have some relief in this contract. But that's just my thought. But I expect that they'll be successful. I hope that they will be. I pray for their success. I hope that they will get that new building sooner than later. I'll just say I am very proud of TCAM. I wish they had more available hours. I wish they had a better location, and I think this gets us in that direction. So in terms of educating the community, preserving our history, helping people understand how this community plays into the issue of civil rights, I think is incredibly important. So I think having a better location, having better hours, and more availability to the people is critically important. I think this is a very important topic. So I want you to be successful. I know a while back there was a request for some money to help us do a capital campaign, trying to raise money on the front end before we got to this $450,000 proposal. There was another effort to raise some money. Do you have anything you can report on previous efforts, or how are we doing on fundraising? Do you have anything you can report at all in terms of how are things going in terms of raising funds outside this 450? Are you able to share anything?
Well, I can share that we are confident that our fundraising efforts and our processes are in place and that we are making great progress. So again, we will make a formal announcement in the summer of this year. That's what we anticipate for as far as our internal timeline. And also, I would like to share that from your earlier comments or concerns about benchmarks or milestones as far as how we're moving forward with the progress, we will continue to make updates with the county commissioners as we have done in the past. I think our past practice has been that we have been in at least 3 to 4 times a year and make ourselves available to answer any questions that you may have at any time. But yes, we will continue to update you and let you know how we are moving forward. But at this time, we are very confident that our fundraising efforts will get us to the finish line.
Okay. I think I have a question for staff, and maybe one more question for you in just a moment, Denise.
Okay.
But to staff, does the Sedgwick County government, do they own that building they're currently using for TCAM? It's owned by the county?
Yes.
Do we know what the plan is? Again, assuming a successful transition to a much better location, what's the plan for that old building? Is there anything in this contract that indicates what we plan to do with that building? I'd like to have total discretion by the county government as to what to do with that building going forward. Yes, sir.
I'll answer best I can, Commissioner. If and when that building becomes vacant, I think it's up to the commission on next steps of what we do with that building, whether we utilize it. I'm pretty sure it's in historic record. So anytime we would touch that, either to remodel or demolish, for example, has to go through the Historic Society. So.
And I understand the historical nature of the building. I get that. I guess I would just like to say that the TCAM is removing themselves from the future plans of that building by accepting this money today. There's no presumption as to what will happen with that building going forward. We have total discretion working through the historical buildings statutes or whatever we have to do, but we have total discretion to do whatever we want with that building. Is that the way we understand this today?
I believe the commission would have that discretion, yes.
Okay. I want to make sure that everyone agrees that we have that option if we want to go forward. And once you guys are in your new building, and we'll celebrate, if we need to use that land, for example, for something, we would have the right to do that, so to speak. So, Denise, if you want to comment on that, or Tim, if you want to comment on that.
Commissioner Howell, if I can jump in.
Sure.
These would have been very significant questions to bring out back when we decided to give them the money, and that wasn't provided to us then, or it would have been in the agreement or such, but there's nothing in the agreement that in any way restricts or tells us what's going to happen to that building after. This is just a funding agreement.
Okay.
What the commission promised to do. If the commission has other desires, and the majority of them want us to come up with other agreements with the TCAM, we can do that.
Sometimes I think of things later on. I don't always think of all the best questions on the front end, but as I've thought about this, I think that's an important detail of this discussion today. And so as we commit $450,000 to this project, I think we need to have some clarity that we have discretion going forward, and that needs to be clearly understood. And so if you want to comment on that, that's fine. It needs to be stated publicly, I guess, what's your position on this. And if we need to slow this down and add some language, we can do that. I'm okay with going forward, but I want it to be very clear that we have agreement on that issue before we vote on this today.
Well, we certainly respect that, but it would be our hope and desire that that building would be repurposed for the services of the community. That building is a key component of the African American story here in Wichita, one of the only 2 remaining buildings of the original community, the original African American settlement. And it would be our desire, if at all possible, that building be repurposed, that there be consideration given that that building continue to serve the community. But we do understand your position, and we do respect that.
I hope you do. I don't know if you agree or not. I'll ask you if you agree. But its location right now between the jail and the parking garage and the courthouse is really not ideal. I mean, it's
Not
a terrible
for a
location.
museum, no.
No, it's terrible for really everything. In terms of a community building, it's just there's a story behind the building. And I get that. And I appreciate that. I don't want to downplay the importance of the history of that story. But in terms of its location, it's a horrible location, and which is why we need you to have a much better location. We support that. We want you to have success and be much more available to the public and better hours and more education, because it really serves a purpose to the community. But this building you're currently in, it's in poor shape. To move that building, years ago we talked about moving that building. It was incredibly expensive to move it. And I think the community basically decided it wasn't in the best interest of the community to do that at that time. And so we need to have some clarity. I think eventually we have to have a discussion about not just repurposing the building in its current state, but repurposing the building in terms of the land. The land might need to be repurposed, and that building may not be part of that plan. So we need to have clarity that we may need to move in that direction. It's not because we don't respect and appreciate the history of that building. It's just it doesn't fit the community any longer based on what's going on. And I just think that it's I guess having said all those things, I desperately want you to have a wonderful brand new building that really serves the purpose of a museum that it needs to provide that education to this community. That's the most important thing here. But this historic building, it's just, because of its location, it's just really not conducive to long-term support from the county taxpayers. So let me wrap this up and say I'll support the resolution, but I think we need to have trailer language, if we can do that, to amend this, to make that clear, so we don't have to have this good discussion later on. Would that be acceptable, Mr. Pipoon?
I don't know what you're talking about, trailer language, Commissioner. We could revise this agreement to establish benchmarks. We could revise this agreement to take into consideration future development of that property and see if TCAM would agree to it, but that's not part of the agreement now, and that wasn't made clear to us back when the commission decided to award this funding. But we can always, if you've got the commission's wills to pull this item at this point and look into those considerations, our department will be happy to redraft that agreement.
If I was to make a substitute motion with that condition, would that be a reasonable way to go forward?
Yes, if you can be specific enough with your with your motion that we can then draft that as an amended contract, but then we'd still have to go back and discuss this with TCAM and their lawyers, Mr. Ayers and their folks, to see if they agree to that language. I think it would almost be better just to pull it at this time if this commission feels that there needs to be additional language in this agreement.
Commissioner Howell, before you make a substitute motion, remember, we do not bind future commissioners. So we can make adjustments as things go forward. We just saw that recently when we changed some of the different rules on mill levy and so forth. So I think that right now the appropriate thing to do is to approve this as it goes forward. And if we don't see action, and I'm certain that we will, because of the leadership that are just sitting in this room. And I feel confident that this is going to happen. Again, I don't really want to do anything to alter this, because I think we can alter it if we don't see action in the future. But I feel confident that that's not going to happen. So I just wanted to make that comment. Commissioner Howell, you can continue.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I agree. We do 5-year agreements with different organizations, and we always have the right to change our direction. That we're not going to bind a future commission that they can't take a different direction if they feel like they absolutely have to do that. That's certainly something that's always available to them, with a few exceptions like the East Kellogg Tag Office. But nevertheless, my concern is that without dealing with this issue of the building, that there's a presumption by the community that we're not going to take some of the actions we might need to take. And there is maybe an expectation that we will preserve that building in its current state. And I don't know that that's reasonable. So I think as we provide $450,000 to TCAM, which they need, and this community display needs a different location for that museum, we need to cross this bridge at some point. And I don't know when to do that. I think by itself, that's a very difficult topic. As we discussed $450,000, it couples a good with something may not be viewed as something that's really positive and good. But together it makes sense. Separate, it's very difficult to do the second part of that by itself. So I think it's important that we have this discussion about the other building. And if we don't do it right this minute or during this contract discussion, as we offer the $450,000 to TCAM, then when will we do it? By itself, it's very difficult to move that idea forward. So I guess as much as they don't want to do it, again, I support the 450. That's not the point. That's not the point here. But I think we have to have a discussion. And it doesn't mean this is. I'm not presuming I know what the future of that building is. I just think we have to have complete discretion by the county without any expectations by the community or by TCAM as to what those things will be. And that's it. So I guess I'll make a substitute motion. We would delay this to add a language regarding the state of the future disposition of the current facility. I make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Howell. And normally for discussion purposes, I'd second to any motion, but I think we can work this in the future. I truly do. If we see no action, and I don't think that we're going to see that, we can always revisit this. Not only are we providing an additional $90,000 a year, our normal support of TCAM is somewhere around $170,000 and beyond that. And they work with us every time. And I think that we can work through this. And I agree with you. Once that some other location is determined and we're able to get the valuable collection that is over in TCAM right now into a more secure building where that we don't have $1 million worth of art underneath the steps, then at that point we can make a decision as a commission on what happens to that building. But I think, and I don't want to curtail your discussion, but as I said, I'd normally second something, but in this case, I think we've got other options. So I hope you understand that.
I don't expect we'll see a contract come up and says that we reserve the right to do what we want with that building. It's actually unnecessary because you said a minute ago, we already own the building. We can do whatever we want. But let's say 5 or 10 years from now, there's a discussion about raising that building or doing something over there, that's critical. Maybe we build a new administration building and it needs to take up some of that space. If that was to happen at some point in the future, hopefully that would be 10 years away. But if that discussion happens at some point in the future, I don't want there to be an uproar of people who are very upset about that aspect of that decision at that time. The reality is we do support TCAM with regular annual support, and we have for a long time, and I appreciate that. I've supported that in the past. And I'm supporting this capital campaign as well. So I'm very supportive of TCAM, and I understand the importance of TCAM. That's really not what this is about today. But I am concerned about that building going forward. And it's been a long-standing, difficult discussion to have. And as we offer this money, we need to clean this up a little bit somehow and say, as we move in that direction, that we have supported TCAM and all of its mission. At the same time, the taxpayers have a county government that needs to do what it needs to do in all of its assets, and that building may not serve our future needs. And so if that building becomes a discussion where we have to say, worst case is we raise the building and repurpose that land, that discussion doesn't need to be an emotional battle in this community. It needs to be something that is understood today. That can happen. And we have that. If we have that need, we'll have to cross that bridge. As much as we may not want to do that. So again, TCAM is going to be in a wonderful, beautiful, brand new building or new building to them, and it's going to be glorious. But this old building needs to have full discretion by the county commissioner and the county government. So as I vote for this, I guess that's my understanding. Regardless whether we have a language in front of us or an agreement on what I've just said, that's my intent today as I vote for this today. So hopefully that's clear. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the discussion. I appreciate my colleague and wanting to be a good steward of county resources, but I just want to make sure and to squash any doubt that may be placed in the air because of this conversation and the path forward with TCAM as far as moving to a better location for the community. And so I would invite you to join one of our board meetings or to speak with Denise and Ted or John or Ebony to squash anything that might place doubt because it is going to happen. And the community's support so far has been incredible. Now, I don't want to just gloss over the fact of this conversation leading into the future of the building. That building has been at that spot for over 103 years. 1917, Calvary Baptist Church. It is very important to the history of our community. Not only Black history, but white history as well, right? We all are sharing in this because we need to understand what this land represents and how county government and where we sit, what was here before we were here. I think that's very, very important. Yesterday on our federal agenda, we talked about reentry programs. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about, with the Mental Health and Substance Abuse Coalition, we talked about other reentry programs from our jail. Yes, it is connected to our jail in proximity. And so could we think of ways to utilize that building, going back to its original purpose of community, connection, a place of worship, a place of healing. And could we utilize that when we reimagine our criminal justice system to think about those who can be reintegrated into the community? And could that be the spot where they learn a new skill or trade or are inspired to get off drugs or to reconnect with their children, to get a job placement? Those are the things that this building could be redesigned for, and I'd love it. I'd love to have that conversation, but this agreement today should not be tied to the future of that, because if we have so many buildings here at Sedgwick County that if we tied all of our agreements like where we're going to go once we've vacated this building, we'd never get anything done. So I am so excited about this agreement today. And I look forward to that future conversation. I appreciate your comments, Chairman Dennis, about tying the hands of future commissions because we don't know how long this will be. We know we're going to be moving quickly. I know that's going to happen fast. But as far as the history of what happens with the Calvary Baptist Church, that's going to be a larger, more broader community conversation because there are a lot of people who pay attention to this and would love to see it repurposed and utilized for something that has to do with our criminal justice system and helping those people re-enter into society. We're going to be talking about the Stepping Up initiative here pretty soon. So we as county government spend a lot of money on our criminal justice system, whether we like it or not. We have a jail sitting right next to us that is a little city pretty much. And so if we could get folks to stop re-entering the jail, I can go for hours, I'll stop. But I appreciate this discussion. I hope that my words are understood and for their full intention. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Meitzner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, during the discussion, I had a chance to read the agreement and just want to point out a couple things. On the very first page, I guess if it's in your agenda packet, page 9, agenda item B. Anyway, the second whereas, it says to provide additional funding to support the museum's capital improvements. It doesn't really say capital for a building. It says capital improvements. I'm not sure that that's matters that much or not. But item 4, provide the capital improvement funding to the museum and the county. Capital improvement there is capitalized. but there's no definition of what capital improvement would be. Again, it doesn't necessarily say. So that's just things that I noticed. I'm not an attorney, so I don't claim to be. But the bottom of that first page says, prior to any distribution of funding, the museum will furnish to the county in such form the county may require statements, records, reports, blah, blah, blah. So I think it's required that the museum provide all those funding reports, which I assume would show their status on their capital campaign. But I am comforted as well if there is a problem. The last page 3, there's clause 9 is all the termination, obviously for cause, but there's also a convenience that if the county determines that they need to suspend or from time to time in part or whatever, they can give 30 days notice. Could be a budget issue or whatever. So there is some level of protection that it can be reviewed and adjusted and suspended. So I'm just pointing that out. So was I incorrect on any of that? Okay. Thank you for letting me point those out.
Thank you. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just going to wrap this up, and I'm glad to support the resolution that supports the money for the capital campaign, and I support TCAM. As we sit here, it was mentioned a minute ago that I need to sit down and talk with Ted and Ebony and Denise, and I guess my thought is I think I have in the past. I understand how important this is, and I hope you understand my support. And you feel that I, as Commissioner Howell, have been supportive of TCAM all the years I've been here. And I hope there's no doubt on that. Okay. Because I've been very supportive. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Well, I don't see any other comments from any of the commissioners. Again, Denise and Ted, thank you very much for being here today. Denise can tell you that I started working this, trying to find another location for TCAM as soon as I became a member of this commission, and had numerous talks with her predecessor, trying to figure out which direction to go, and I'm kind of very excited to see what the future is going to hold for TCAM, and where Sedgwick County is proud to be associated with that organization, and we look forward to what you have in the future for us. So thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner? Aye. Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Thank you very much for being here and discussing it with us today. Have a great day. Mr. Clerk, next item.
Item C, a resolution to adopt the Stepping Up initiative to reduce the number of people with mental illness in jails.
Morning, Joan.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Joan Tammany, Executive Director of ComCare, and with me today is Captain Jared Schechter and Audra Goldsmith, and we are here to ask for your endorsement of the resolution to make Sedgwick County a stepping up county. We started discussing this last fall in the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council meetings, followed by a presentation from Audra to the Commission about what the activities of Stepping Up is and what the initiative nationally is. This is a national initiative. It's launched by the Council of State Governments Justice Center, the National Association of Counties, and the American Psychiatric Association, and been in place since May of 2015. The intent is to rally counties to achieve measurable reductions in the number of people in detention facilities who have mental illness. By supporting a Stepping Up resolution, it encourages counties to collect accurate and accessible baseline data on the prevalence of serious mental illness in their detention facilities, which is a crucial step to help leaders across the county to identify key drivers of the problem and create action plans tailored toward our community's most critical needs. There's over 500 counties already engaged in this initiative, and it's time for Sedgwick County to join the ranks in becoming a Stepping Up community. We should be proud of the efforts already in place in our county that align with the Stepping Up initiative. Audra is a local support to us and can provide us technical support at no cost, as there's a Stepping Up initiative technical assistance center here in Kansas, supported by funding from the state of Kansas. It will help us establish baseline data. Many communities create a dashboard that's visible to the community and allow us to set up reduction targets, measure progress, and achieve results. We believe the natural place for these conversations is at the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, which was established to look at alternatives to jail and incarceration for people with mental illness and substance abuse. The benefits are important. We get access through Audra and the national team on best practices going on in other communities. We get access to policies that may be in play in other communities. We get the technical assistance and the guidance to help us develop the structure for moving this forward. So by supporting the resolution, we will also receive state and federal recognition for the work already at play in our county and for the progress we make moving forward. So I'm only one of three of us here today, so if either of you guys have any comments you want to make, I'll let them do that. But our ask is that you support the resolution that you have in front of you.
Thank you, Joan. Colonel Schechter.
Good morning, Commissioners. On behalf of the Sheriff's Office, on behalf of the Sheriff, I just would like to thank the Commission for looking at this and looking at the Stepping Up initiative. I think it's a great process forward. For 10 years now, we've had a mental health management unit inside the detention facility. It was a big push of Sheriff Easter. And going forward with our new CAD, RMS, JMS software that we're in the process of getting ready to deploy, part of that will involve gathering this baseline data for mental health. We've always anecdotally known what our mental health population is in the jail, but this new software will help us to really establish that baseline so we can take the next steps of the Stepping Up initiative to find those solutions in our community to help divert people when we can from the criminal justice system. So again, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Anyone? Do you want to speak? Okay. Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you all for being here today. I just have one quick question. Will this remind me if this will calculate like how much money we're spending on mental health services in our jail? I asked Sheriff Easter the other day if there was, he said our mental health pod costs around $750,000 a year. The medications that we administer weren't really calculated, and I don't know that we're really capturing how much money is spent on mental health services in our jail. I think that would be an interesting number to see how much money that we are spending on mental health services, to see what we're spending. Are we reducing the number? Are we having better outcomes with those who are in our jail currently? Is that something that will be captured, or how do we capture that if it won't be?
I don't know if that's something that will be captured directly in Stepping Up, Commissioner, but that's something we can definitely look at going forward, is how to dissect that monthly payment that we make for our medical costs for the jail that include all our mental health services, because the county pays a flat fee per month for those services. So we can look into our billing and how that's done, see if we can dissect that some more, but that's not always some part of Stepping Up.
Okay. So I heard you on the radio the other day. You're kind of a celebrity now. KMUW had talked about, I'd love for you to just, since you're standing at the podium right now, talk about kind of what Sedgwick County has initiated with folks with substance use disorders.
Yes, recently we have had some discussions at the command level and with our current vendor, WellPath, about looking for medication-assisted treatment continuation programs. Basically looking at citizens in our community who are already receiving medication-assisted treatment, i.e. receiving Suboxone, methadone, buprenorphine in the community, as they're trying to work on their substance abuse issues in the community themselves, will end up back incarcerated in the facility. Historically, when someone was brought into the jail, those weren't medications that we supported due to concerns of facility safety and security, being they are narcotic type drugs. So as a command staff, we made a decision the last few months to approach our vendor about what it would take to continue people on the MAC program in the community that come into jail for short periods of time. So successfully, after many months of work, because of COVID kind of delayed us in this process, but our WellPath, our doctors on site, our PAs on site all received their DEA-X licenses, which allowed us to then bridge medications for people who come in who are on Suboxone or buprenorphine in the community, and then we're also able to work with methadone clinics to be able to pick up doses to have those doses delivered in the jail. We do a separate med pass. It's very controlled in how we do it. And there was no extra cost to the county, no extra cost to the taxpayers for us to do this. It's also something we were able to do inside our existing contract, inside our existing payments we make. So it was something we were very very successful, very happy to deal with our current vendor to have no increased cost, but also be able to provide resources to those people in our community who want to stay on their treatment programs and try to make those positive changes in their life, even they may be incarcerated again.
Well, will this program be tracking outcomes of this initiative? And if not, how will we be tracking who received these medications? Are we seeing a recidivism rate with these folks? How are we going to be tracking that?
We're working on how we're tracking that right now. We just recently started the program, as I talked about on the radio. I think as of this morning that we have 3 inmates in custody who are receiving medication-assisted treatment. So we're working on that mechanism and how to make sure we fully identify who they are, then track their outcomes if they go back out to the community. So.
Well, I just can't thank you guys enough. We are one of the few jails in the country doing that right now, so I just commend all of your efforts. Please thank for me to your staff all the work that you guys did. I know that's a really big deal to help folks who are in our jail who might need it, instead of just popping them in there. They're still addicted to drugs. They get out and that's all they want. So I appreciate your efforts. At the appropriate time, Chairman, after discussion, I'd like to make the motion to approve.
Certainly. Well, again, thank you for all of them. I don't see any other comment. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I really just want to say a big thank you. Good morning, Commissioner and Chairman. I'm Audra Goldsmith, and I manage the Kansas Stepping Up Technical Assistance Center. And I really just want to say thank you for supporting this resolution and taking a look at it and considering it. I'm very excited for Sedgwick County. As Joan had mentioned, there's a lot of work that Sedgwick County does that is very wonderful work. And I really am looking forward to using Sedgwick County as mentors for other counties across the state who want to try and develop these types of services and resources within their own counties. So this is a very happy day for me. Personally, I'm a Sedgwick County resident, but also for my profession and my career of supporting the work in Sedgwick County and moving this initiative forward here. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And once again, we hear from our sheriff quite frequently on the issues going on in the jail. We've used the stats a number of times that the largest mental health facility in the state of Kansas is the Sedgwick County Jail, and that's absolutely not what it should be. The sheriff, along with our district attorney, has recognized the issues and started the Mental Health Substance Abuse Coalition that's trying to work through some of these issues. But it not only impacts our jail, it impacts our district attorney, it impacts our court system. So we're paying a number of times for these type of issues. So I sincerely support this, and I'll turn it over to Commissioner Cruz for a motion.
Thank you, Chairman. With that, I'd like to adopt the resolution to adopt the Stepping Up initiative to reduce the number of people with mental illness in our jails.
Thank you. Second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Thank you all very much. We appreciate you being here. And Mr. Clerk, next item, please.
Item D, report of the bids and contracts regular meeting on March 3rd, 2022.
Well, good morning. You're not Joe.
I am not, but I'm playing him on television this morning. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Britt Rosencutter, Purchasing. The regular meeting of the Boards and Bids and Contracts of March 3rd results in 6 items for your consideration. The first is the 2022 painting, pavement marking, Public Works, and the recommendation is to accept their low responsive bid from Traffic Control Services Incorporated in the amount of $564,550. The second item is a bridge improvement for Public Works. This is the replacement of a bridge on 85th Street North between Oliver Avenue and Woodlawn Boulevard. The recommendation is to accept the low bid from King Construction Company in the amount of $686,915.50. The third item is ACC upgrade 911 phone system for emergency communications. The recommendation is to accept the quote from Kansas 911 Coordinating Council for a one-time setup cost of $59,000 and authorize continued annual support renewals per contract language. The fourth item is our community e-waste collection event, Environmental Resources. The recommendation is to accept the proposal from Dynamic Recycling Incorporated for a cost of $161,400 and a collection rate of 24 cents per pound for the duration of the event. Item number 5 is the Capital Improvement Plan Projects Application Software Solution Enterprise Resource Planning. And the recommendation is to accept the proposal from ClearGov Incorporated for a one-time implementation fee of $3,600 and establish contract rates listed above for a period of 3 years with 2 one-year options to renew beginning July 1st, 2022. And the final item is 7 marked and 2 unmarked police interceptor utility vehicles, fleet management, and the sheriff's office. The recommendation is to accept the low bid from Rustiek Ford Incorporated in the amount of $363,223. I will be happy to try to answer any questions you may have, and I recommend the approval of these items.
Thank you. Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on item 4, if we get the same, if we receive the same number of pounds of e-waste we did last time we did this, it would be about $300,000 cost, and that comes off the solid waste fee fund. Is that correct?
That I don't know. I was hoping that Susan Erlewine would be here this morning to answer those questions.
We have an answer here. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. That's funded by the solid waste fee.
Okay. Just more of a comment, and I'll make a motion here, but I do support this. I did meet with the solid waste committee the other day, a couple days ago, shared a vision I have for doing this. One of my frustrations is when we have these events like this, whether it be a tire roundup or e-waste event or whatever, some people are not going to wait several years to exercise this option, and some people will. There may be other options in the community, but they will hold those items back. Imagine tires is maybe a better example. Some people might store tires in their backyard for a number of years waiting for the next tire roundup to happen. And that's not the best solution to that problem. But then we know that happens. And then other people may not wait that long, and they don't want to pay a disposal fee, so they throw them in the ditches along the county roads. And so this type of event, I know it's well-intentioned, and we're going to do this again. I know we've had over almost 1.5 million pounds came in the first time we did this at the wine day event out at the Kansas Coliseum at that time. So that was more than 10 years ago, I think, when that happened. Having said that, I would like to see us have a discussion, maybe a staff meeting, about moving this type of event to more of a year-round event. That people in the community would have a place to take their stuff that would be responsive to getting these items out of the community, out of the landfill, and do the green and the green initiative, if you will, do the right thing by recycling, repurposing, reusing things out of the community. But when you have these sporadic events, in fact, I would just say, if we are going to have any more of these events, we should advertise them years in advance, because people may not realize right now that this is happening. And, last month they would not have known this was scheduled, and so they don't know how long they have to wait, how long they have to store these items, waiting for the event to happen. We need to advertise these things a long time in advance so that it can be as successful as possible. But this event, although it's a great event, I think it could be a lot better. So I think we should have a staff discussion about changing the way we do this from these sporadic events that are fairly expensive to make them more successful and really meet the mission even better, is to make it more available to the community year-round. So that's a conversation I want to have. I have no other questions or comments, but Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we would approve the recommendations of the Board of Bids and Contracts.
Thank you. I'll second the motion. But if we do bring it before the staff in a meeting in the future, make sure that we capture all the costs, because if we do this year-round, it's going to take 2 or 3 people to start staffing this location. We're still going to have disposal cost of the final product, no matter what the product looks like. So make sure that all of the details are involved. Anytime a commissioner asks for something to be on a future staff meeting, we'll cooperate with that and make sure that it's on there. But I want to make sure that this is a one-time cost. If you start doing it year-round, then we've got a continuing cost. So we have a motion and a second. I see no further comments. Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz,
Aye.
Commissioner Howe,
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez,
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Thank you. Appreciate it. Mr. Clerk, next item, please.
Item E, discussion of the task force.
Thank you. I just want to make a couple points before we get into the discussion. Last week, we had an impromptu discussion of the Communities Task Force collective letter to the U.S. Department of Justice for an FBI investigation into a potential civil rights violation of Sedgwick Lofton's rights on September 24th, 2021. I think all commissioners have now had an opportunity to review and reflect on that letter. I'd like to talk a little bit about transparency. And I will say this again, as a local government, we are accountable and transparent to our community within the boundaries of the law. We have been open and transparent for any and all law enforcement agencies to review Sedgwick Lofton's tragic death and the circumstances involved. We have been cooperative and forthcoming with all agencies looking into this matter. I'd like to talk a little bit about the Community Task Force. In late January, our Department of Corrections formed a Community Task Force in consultation with the District Attorney and Sheriff's Office, also of our community members and stakeholders, whose goal is to develop recommendations for improvement and changes to the existing system standards and performance of the Department of Children and Families, law enforcement, and youth correction programs. And I'll say that again. We ask our community members and stakeholders to have a goal to develop recommendations for improvements and changes to the existing system standards and performance of the Department of Children and Families, law enforcement, and youth correction programs. We as elected leaders support this endeavor, and we have supported it from day one. It was important to both sides of the street, both the city and the county, that this task force work independent and unrestricted of any governing body. This task force has true autonomy. This commission has publicly committed and stated that we would not, I repeat, not direct their agenda, not direct their actions, and not interfere in their meetings, recommendations, and outcomes. In regards to the DOJ letter, this task force is assembled for 6 meetings now, received information from the Department of Children, foster care, mental health, ComCare, 911, and law enforcement. The task force is formalized and as of last week sent a letter to the Department of Justice to request an FBI investigation into potential civil rights violation of Sedgwick Lofton's rights. It was our intention as the board to support the task force in a DOJ review and not jump immediately into an investigation. In talking with the sheriff, an investigation before a review is out of sequence in any criminal or civil matter. I am hopeful that the task force can now focus on the review of recommendations of system standards and improvements for our youth correction programs, law enforcement, and DCF after the tragic death of Sedgwick Lofton. I know as the Board of County Commissioners, and we are all very appreciative of the Community Task Force members, we appreciate their work, their time, their effort that they are providing to this community, and we look forward to the final report and their recommendations. So as we move forward, as I've said, we will work together to do what it takes to support, drive, and dedicate the resources to make sure that something as tragic as Sedgwick Lofton's death does not happen again to any of our youth. We have a lot of work ahead of us. We recognize that there are youth that are in crisis today, and this is critical work to make the juvenile justice system enriched and better for our youth. We are committed to seeing policy changes. Our role with this task force is to allow them independence to work without any interference or influence from the Commission. Those are my thoughts. Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, next item. Stand by. Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for those words. I have just sent some language to Akeem, or who would like it to print off. I'd like to share it with my commissioners. Yeah. As we talked about at the beginning of our meeting today, the letter that that I received, that I have shared with our manager and Commissioner Howell, I do think it's important that the task force that has been set up feels supported. And to Mr. Barfield's comments earlier, a unification of support. We have discussed the letter that we were going to send. So my question is, what happens with the letter that we were going to send with the task force request?
I think I was pretty clear in the statement that I made that when we voted to support a review.
Okay, so I will make a motion to send a letter of support from the Sedgwick County Commission in support of the task force request to the Department of Justice for a pattern and practice investigation. That's my motion.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Okay, so since there is no second, I'll just make the comments that we have stories, multiple stories coming out of things that have happened in this facility. And in order to ensure this doesn't happen again, there are more than just policies that need to be changed. We need to ensure that the things that are changed protect children and not the system itself. So I appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion today. I'm saddened that we aren't united in the front to support this task force request for a pattern and practice investigation, but it is what it is, and there are some real challenges that this community faces, and we as leaders should support those things, and it makes me incredibly sad that we would not be united in that front. Thank you, Chairman.
Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do want to make a couple of comments. I want the task force to know I do appreciate them, and I think they have important work to do. We can't go back and unwind the past. It is what it is, but we can learn from that. And I think that, again, without trying to direct them, as I don't think that's the intent of my discussion today, I don't want to direct them as to what they should do. But I am hopeful that they would spend their energy looking at DCF, DACA, St. Francis foster care, state laws, policies and procedures both of the county and the city, training. I have an outstanding question I still haven't got an answer to, and that is of the officers that responded to the Sedgwick Lofton 911 call, how many of those officers were there and how many of those had CIT training?
We don't need to hand that. We don't need to hand that.
I think CIT training is a lost opportunity. I don't know how many of the officers at that scene had CIT training, but I'll continue to argue. I heard someone for the city say just the other day, I think it was Gordon Ramsay was departing, or someone was talking about CIT training, and they said that there's just not enough availability for that training for these officers. They don't have it. Generally speaking, very few officers have CIT training. I don't know the status of that, but that to me is an opportunity. And so, again, we can learn from what happened, and we can spring forward to things that need to be addressed and things that can be improved. And I have said before, here we are now, about 3 weeks from the end of the legislative session, and I am sure there are state laws that probably played into this situation, and we lost our opportunity to address those state laws because we or more focused on talking to the DOJ regarding a request for an investigation. Let me just reiterate once again, the district attorney did not work alone. He had the KBI alongside and essentially supervised the investigation that the district attorney processed. The FBI was included from the very beginning. And the FBI is a federal government that's synonymous in a sense with the U.S. Attorney as well as the Department of Justice. So they've always been involved in this case from the very beginning. They've always had their opportunity, and I think no matter what we say in a letter, by the way, I'm sure this letter's been sent by now, so it doesn't really matter if we issued a letter or not because it's not going to catch up with the one that's been sent by the task force already. But having said that, I don't think that the federal government really pivots to what we tell them to do. They do what they want. At the end of the day, they took a look at this case, and apparently they're not interested. I've talked about if you don't believe that the district attorney did his job correctly, that they always have the chance to do a citizen's grand jury. And apparently that's continues to fall on deaf ears. At the end of the day, there's a lot of opportunities for review and understanding exactly all the things that may be played into this case. I actually testified against wrap restraints for people with perceived mental anguish because I think it exasperates the problem. And you know what? I said that alone. No one stood there with me to advocate for the same thing. I personally think it's a serious policy choice that this community needs to have, that discussion. And I would like to see us not use wrap restraints for someone in mental distress. So I think there's opportunities, and again, for the task force, I appreciate what they're trying to do, but I feel like they're looking backwards rather than forwards. And I wish that they would spend their energy reviewing policies and procedures, both DCF, foster care, DACA, all things I've already mentioned. There's so many opportunities. So without me directing them, I am disappointed we spent so much time drafting a letter to the federal government, which frankly, they're not going to pivot based on our request. Same time, the clock is ticking as we look forward to other opportunities to make things better, especially at the legislative level. So with that, I don't support a letter because I don't think it's meaningful. I think the reality is we as a community need to look forward and understand what is good and bad. And let's advocate for change that actually makes a difference here in this community. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I don't see any other comments. Mr. Clerk, next item.
Consent agenda.
Mr. Manager.
Good morning, Chairman and Commission. Tom Stolz, County Manager's Office, recommend approval of consent items F through O.
Thank you. Before I make a motion, I'd like Jim Weber to come up and address item golf for Commissioner Howell.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there a specific question?
No, just, my community is very distressed about this bridge. If you don't know, Derby community, first-class city has 25,000 people, but the number of people that go south, there's only maybe 3 or 4 really good ways to get from the Wichita, the metropolitan part of our city, to the Derby community, and one of those paths is very well traveled. In fact, I think this talks about 11,000 vehicles per day traveling up and down 63rd Street, and I know that the plan right now is to close that bridge for a short time. The community, again, they saw half the bridge was closed down, the speed limits were reduced. They're upset because they don't see anything happening, and they don't understand exactly what's happening or why it's happening. So I thought it'd be reasonable to have an explanation for the community, hopefully get a news story going that would explain exactly what's happening with this bridge. This is an artery for that community, as well as, again, to the south of that is 83rd Street, and the next bridge over the river. It also is going through a similar situation where it's going to have to be shut down as well. Thankfully, there's some coordination between these two bridge projects that are not going to be shut down at the same time. But for people who are traveling to Derby, this funnels that traffic onto K-15, which is, I have a great concern. I continue to share my concern. K-15 is, in my opinion, is becoming a very big Sedgwick County priority in my mind. And I think that to add 11,000 cars a day to traffic is going to be going up and down K-15 is very concerning. So, Mr. Weber, I just wanted you to share your knowledge of this project and as to why we're doing this. I think the community would like to have an explanation.
Okay, I'll try not to get too engineered and long-winded, but basically, this is one of the major crossings over the Ark River, 63rd Street. It does have 11,000 vehicles a day. The bridge is 43 years old. We were looking at this and identified it as one in our CIP a year or two back that we wanted to take because of the value of the bridge for replacement costs, have a consultant come in and do a detailed study. And we need to think through, are we going to do some rehab work on this bridge, or is it something we're going to program for total replacement in some out year? And so they came in to do the study, and as part of that, we don't have access to what they call a snooper truck, but it's basically got a gantry that can wrap around underneath the deck of the bridge, and you can get to where you can touch every element of the bridge. So one of the things they were doing was getting in and looking at the pier caps and everything around how the beams are supported on the bridge. And in that inspection, they discovered that over one pier in the north half of the bridge, there are 2, 3, 4 beams where there's been quite a bit of deterioration of the concrete and the bearing system. It's a steel bearing system that holds all that up. They came back to us quickly and they said, this is a significant finding. We need to report this to the state because this is a significant problem. We did get that reported to the state. We looked at the information that they had, and we determined that we needed to close the north half of the bridge to traffic because we don't want some catastrophic failure to occur with traffic on it. The feeling was that the south half of the bridge, which we're on right now, is okay. It doesn't have the deterioration or the problem. So that led to the next step was, what do you do about it? We've got 11,000 cars a day on a bridge that's 4 lanes wide. It's 4-lane road in both directions. And it is a major river crossing. And so we came back to the commission. We did a separate small design contract with the consultant that had done the inspection work to have them design a repair project for this thing. We've been operating it as an emergency repair. That sounds a little bit weird when you hear the time frame for this, but that is in fact what it is. So they developed plans. We started processing forward on an emergency replacement strategy. There are statutes and there are things in Charter 68 that let you find an emergency and kind of take a quicker path forward. It's an informal bidding process, which is what we've done. Because the construction market is just crazy, I think we've talked to you before about what's happening in the bridge market anyway. What we found when we were talking to the contractors that we thought would be qualified and good candidates to do this job is that the window for getting a crew in to do this is out quite a ways, and it's narrow. We did get 3 proposals to do it, and to give you some idea, the cost ranged from $417,000 down to $135,000 to do the repair. The time frames, we had one that was able to come in July 25th, I think, or after the 4th of July. We had 2 of them that couldn't get to it until September. We had given them the opportunity to tell us how long it would take to do the work. 2 of them said 50, and I'll be careful about the language, working days, so that's Monday through Friday. 50 working days. We had one at 125, I think. So, as Commissioner Howells mentioned, we have Derby, and it's not the actual bridge on 83rd Street, but on the east end of the bridge, they're doing a project on, I think it's Market Street, that they didn't get done last fall. They need to come back and do that, but it's essentially going to close that crossing because the bridge will be good, but there's no place to go when you cross the bridge. That really needs to happen this spring. There are, for example, the bearing device, the steel bearing device, there's a long delivery time on that. And so what we concluded is that we could get this done with the lowest cost proposal, which is the $135,000, 50 working days that we'd have to mess with this bridge, but we'll have to wait till September to do it. But in doing that, we can have this open before December when bad weather comes, and that's kind of a problem too. We are working with the contractor. I don't think it's going to be closed for so 50 working days is like 3 months. When you work all that out. I don't think it's going to be closed that whole time. We'll work with them to try to keep the closure as short as possible. But it does not look like you can get in and do this repair work without getting everybody off the bridge for some period of time. The probably the worst part of the situation, we've been out with Commissioner Howell, I think twice, looking at the traffic control on the east side of the river, is we've got to neck people down from 2 lanes to 1 to get them across the bridge. We'd have to slow them down. We have traffic control devices that are on the bridge that we have to maintain. And it's really something that we need to deal with, but we can wait until September and get this done for, I think, the right price. That will let Derby get their pressure on 47th Street, but closures are, with bridge work, kind of necessary. The goal here would be to get this done and get this whole bridge back in service. They're still working on the overall study. We still haven't concluded, can we rehab this and, 3 or 4 years out, and that extends the life. How long does that extend it, or we need to look at a total replacement? But I think that the things lean towards getting this work done and getting it open. I think they lean towards doing a rehab that'll probably add another 15 years to this 43-year-old bridge, and then look at a total replacement. Probably would cost us $8 million to replace this bridge. So we're trying to manage that as well as we can. Why spend $8 million now if we can put it down the road a little bit? And maybe everybody's driving hovercraft or something. We don't need a bridge. I don't know. But that's a longer story than you probably wanted. But it is not an ideal situation, but I think we feel fortunate that the closure will be pretty short and get the thing back in service. I would just add that probably reconstructing this bridge, which we're not anticipating doing right now, that's probably a year-long closure, honestly, to do that. That'll happen someday, but we're trying to push it out to where I don't care.
Well, I know you probably didn't want to be here this morning to talk about this, but I think it's important to the community. And again, my two questions were going to be, how much is that bridge worth? You already answered the question, $8 million. And if we had to replace the entire bridge, it's about a year-long project. To me, those are the compelling points here. So I appreciate Public Works being proactive and inspecting this bridge before it got to the point where we didn't have this option. I don't like the timing of this. This fall, September through November, is not a great time for me to see a major artery into my district closed it down. But I do think that saving another $250,000 by pushing this off to September is obviously the right thing for the taxpayer. And I think that 50 working days, again, you say about 3 months. I'd like to push that to 2.5 months. But at the end of the day, I want to say thank you for the explanation. I think the community will appreciate knowing as to what's going on and why. So I think it was important for you to be here to explain that to the people. So thank you so much for that. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we would approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. We have a motion, and I'll second it. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner. Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. And at this time, I'd like to recess the Board of County Commissioners meeting and call to order the governing body of Fire District Number 1. Mr. Clerk, next item.
Okay. Roll call. Commissioner Meitzner. Commissioner Cruz.
Present.
Commissioner Howell.
Present.
Commissioner Lopez.
Present.
Chairman Dennis.
Present. Next item, please.
Public agenda.
We don't have anyone signed up to sign on public agenda. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on the fire district? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, next item.
Consideration of minutes. Item A. Fire meeting minutes of January 19th, 2022.
All the commissioners have had an opportunity to review the minutes from January 19th, 2022. Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, call roll.
Commissioner Meitzner. Aye. Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Next item, please.
Consent agenda.
Mr. Manager.
Good morning again, Chairman, Commissioners. Tom Stoles. Recommend approval of fire consent item B.
Move to approve item Bravo. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, call roll.
Commissioner Meitzner. Aye. Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Does any commissioners have anything else to come before the governing body of Fire District Number 1? Seeing nothing, we are adjourned. I'd like to recall the meeting to order for the Board of County Commissioners for March the 9th. Next item, please.
Legislative issues.
Well, good morning, Tanya.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. I was awfully excited this morning to talk to you about legislative issues. I just want to quote Watkins Strategies. This morning they mentioned that we're going to see intense committee action over the next couple of weeks, as the legislature only has until March 18th to finish its committee work in the non-exempt committees. We continue to follow the actions on funding that pertain to our legislative platform items and issues, but I don't have anything to report on that I've reported on in the last couple of weeks. Senate Bill 541, I sent you an email on that last week. We're going to follow that bill, and that bill would restore a number of elements of Senate Bill 40. That includes shifting public health emergency powers to school boards and community colleges away from the local health officer and commissions, and create a number of new vaccine exemptions and limit Board of County Commission authority in some instances. So sent you information on that, and we'll keep you updated on that bill as it moves forward. We have two elections bills that passed in the Senate and Fed and State subcommittee. That's Senate Bill 489. I've briefed you on this before. That's a bill that will require a paper ballot with a watermark. So again, that's passed in the Senate, Fed, and State. And then this is a new bill, Senate Bill 438. I've not briefed you on this. This requires audits of any race where the results are within 1%. And then it also requires audits of 4 different counties every election cycle. So I will send you information on that bill when I get back to my desk today. I also want to mention Senate Bill 542, and I might just mention that Lindsay's here to speak on this bill if you need more information. This is establishing a property tax revenue neutral rate complaint process, authorizing the county clerk to limit the amount of ad valorem taxes to be levied in certain circumstances, and establishing a deadline for budgets to be filed with the Director of Accounts and Reports, and requiring roll call votes and publication of information. So we do have our County Clerk Kelly Arnold and Lindsay Poverso watching this bill, and I think the County Clerk Association is going to be putting in testimony, and then we are aware that KAC has been putting in neutral testimony on that to make some amendments to that bill. As I was sitting here this morning, House Bill 2676, this is our bill that we've put in, creating a code enforcement fund and expanding our equipment reserve fund. Jessica texted me, and Jessica Lucas with Watkins Strategies, she texted me and said that passed out of local government this morning, so that's good news. Also just want to mention on our joint platform that we have with the City, Chamber, GWP, and REAP, the Kansas Senate gave first approval to legislation that would create a set of tax credits designed to protect and grow the Kansas aviation manufacturing industry. So I did want to mention that. So those are my updates this morning, and as always, I'm happy to answer any questions if I can, and if you'd like to provide me any direction on legislative issues or actions, please let me know.
Thank you. Questions for Tanya? Commissioner Meitzner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hey, I just want to make sure that we are staying up with and ahead to supply information to the legislature and to our lobbyists about the state mental health hospital, because I think they're getting close to the finish line, and it's a state deal, but I think the burden's on us to supply.
Sure.
ASAPs, so to speak.
I'll chime in here, and then Tanya can also talk. But yes, Commissioner, we are on the state mental hospital component of the mental health campus. We're on that specific project. We did submit a Spark interest note to the Spark team a couple of weeks ago, which was a 2-pager basically with a summary of that mental health hospital, including square footage and cost, number of beds. We have reconsulted many times with Robin Chadwick of Via Christi that 50 beds is the right number for this jurisdiction, right, and confirmed that. So we're also polishing an executive summary of what you all heard in en banc a week or so ago, distilling that down to a 2- or 3-page executive summary, which We'll talk about the plan. So we'll be inundating Jason and our legislative body with plan. And depending on how deep they want to read into it, there's a 50-page plan that was supplied at the Albuquerque if they want to dig into that document. We'll supply them with all of that. So yes, Commissioner, it's an important time that we stay on top of that. And it is coming down to the finish line. And of course, anything we can do for the community as far as funding on that project is important.
Okay. Just hot off the press, I just received two separate texts that they're discussing this appropriations in mental health hospital in the House appropriations. I don't know what committee all that is, but so it's a critical item and it's being talked. Thank you for the update.
Thank you. I was going to see if you wanted to bring it up during other, but I think during legislative portion might be a better time, Commissioner Meitzner, to talk about Amtrak, because we do need some support from the state.
Oh. Okay, thank you, sir. Yeah, we did promise that, didn't we? Yesterday we did meet with a number of, well, there was 3 representatives from Amtrak were here. And they explained the current status with FRA. Excuse me for cheating to my notes here from that meeting, but FRA is the holding agency for $66 billion distributed through the development of passenger rail throughout the country, including some monies directly to Amtrak to improve some of their internal operation services, upgrade equipment, et cetera. But with that, it appears that when you apply for a grant, for a capital improvement grant, there will be a 80% funding with a 20% match. And so what that means, again, is Oklahoma and Kansas, that connection from Oklahoma City to Newton through Wichita, and it's high on their list. Amtrak says it's one of the easier ones to accomplish, and it's connects population centers. It meets all of the Amtrak stuff, check the box, so to speak. But they did say that they really need our assistance and support at the DOT level. So with that said, they are going to be soliciting proposals between May of 22 through May of 23. We are in communication with KDOT. There is another important part that some of the people, so you got to build it and then you have to operate it. And traditionally, the states and communities are responsible for the gap if revenue is not enough to cover the expenses. And that's always been a item of discussion at various states and entities that cross state lines, who pays for what and how much. But part of this also, there's another part of this that will allow Amtrak to cover over a 6-year period. It's a 90%. So if we have if Oklahoma and Kansas, if we have a lost revenue of, let's say, $100,000 as an example, Amtrak will cover 90,000 of that. So they'll cover 90% of it. And then for the next 5 years, it'll go down 10%. So it's 90, 80, 70, 60, 50, 40. So at the end of the 6th year, of which they would cover 40% of that gap, then after that, the states have to take it on themselves. That's a significant improvement over literally no obligation for covering any of that in the past, or minimal amounts in rarity. So that's good. That's updated news as well. A key word that I keep having go back to is FRA needs to know if our state and Oklahoma plan to include this in I think it's called a corridor development plan. Jim, I may have to get with you and our WAMPO group to further understand and how we can promote our legislatures to ask KDOT to make sure that our state is included and this route is included in the corridor plan. I think they said, correct me, if it's not in there, then it's not, then doesn't matter if you apply for funding or not. You need to be supportive of the corridor plan. And that way you understood it as well. Okay. So our work is to, on our agenda and with our lobbyist, is to make sure that as I understand it better and can articulate to our delegation, South Central Kansas for sure, is what we need to be promoting. So, and at this point, being a corridor plan, it does not cost anything. So there's no, this should be easier to do, but they kind of said it was important. And they didn't, well, they just said they need our support locally. So, and everybody there was very supportive. Similar to the first steps that we did on the Transportation Coalition that helped get us past first base on the North Junction, things like that. So if we are going to have another Transportation Coalition meeting coming up to actually just address this item with the other parts of the region that participate in that. So if I left anything out, please correct me.
Well, thank you. First of all, yesterday during staff meeting, we discussed our federal agenda, and one of the things that they mentioned, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but they said the federal side is pretty well done.
Yeah, they did say that.
Us trying to get anything done at the federal side we're beyond that. It's now shifted to the state side. We have to have the state support. So I'm not. We may want to discuss whether we need to leave that in our federal agenda or kind of pare it down. It's still important, but it sounds like the federal side's done. So it is important, as Commissioner Meitzner said, that we now get the people involved that can make this happen, and that's the governor, the KDOT, and our legislative representatives. And the way that we're going to have to start doing that is John Rolfe from the Chamber was in the meeting with us, and he is setting up a special meeting of the Transportation Coalition on March the 21st coming up. So those of us that are on the Transportation Coalition need to make sure that they're in that meeting, because that's how we got the North Junction. That's how we're getting a lot of projects moving forward. So we need those individuals involved so that we can get the state support as we move forward. So, and I keep putting Commissioner Meitzner on the spot because I call on him to brief this, but he's been working this from the beginning. We're support for him to say that this is the right thing to do. So I appreciate all the work that he's done on this to get us to this point, because we wouldn't even be to this point if it wasn't for Commissioner Meitzner pushing this forward. So I want to thank him for his efforts.
Thank you.
Okay, one final thing on legislative agenda. It is not Sedgwick County legislative agenda, but as a guy that restores cars, it's always been something that I've followed. There was a bill moving through that started as a result of an individual that bought a '59 Corvette out of the state of Kansas and brought it into the state. And at some point, when they were restoring that car to like new condition, they'd had to remove the VIN and they put it back on. As a result, the Kansas Highway Patrol confiscated that vehicle. He spent about $40,000 of his own money beyond the cost of that, trying to fight to get it back, because by state statute, they have to crush that car. So they're going to take a beautiful '59 Corvette and crush it. It's made no sense to anyone in the car committee, community whatsoever, and me included. And so Leo Delpatang, one of the representatives out in western Sedgwick County, got a bill going. It went through the House, passed. Yesterday it passed the Senate 40-0. It's now heading over to the governor's desk. So it's something that I was supporting behind the scenes, but I just wanted to let everybody know that's in the car community that something that was going to cause a huge financial loss to an individual that legally purchased a vehicle and brought it into the state, and the state was going to crush it. So that's been righted. I appreciate it. Anything else for legislative agenda? Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Chairman. I just, I think we're all extremely busy, and we have very limited opportunities to shepherd these bills forward. But this is, HB 2676, that one for our two local government fiscal funds that we're trying to get set up. Appreciate the fact that Chairman Thompson passed that out of his committee this morning. I assume they made a couple technical amendments, and with that, it's not eligible for consent agenda, or I should say the consent calendar is what they call it up there. We need to contact Majority Leader Hawkins and ask him to get this above the line. This is a very late bill. If we don't reach out and ask for that, they may not recognize how important this is to us. And so, again, we've talked about this bill, I think, 5 or 6 years since I've been here. So I think it's very prudent. If you guys would be willing to reach out, whether it be a manager or Tanya or even commissioners, reach out to Majority Leader Dan Hawkins and ask him to bring HB 2676 above the line, because it is behind. If we don't get that over to the Senate, it has no chance of survival. So we're very late in the session. I just want to ask for a little bit of help to get that bill up. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else on legislative agenda? Seeing nothing, thank you, Tanya, for all your work. We appreciate it. Mr. Clerk, next item.
Committee reports.
Oh, any commissioners have anything for committee reports? Seeing nothing, next item, please.
Other.
Commissioners, anyone have anything dealing with other? Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to mention yesterday was International Women's Day, and I had a chance to attend an award ceremony for Storytime Village. It was, I had to unfortunately leave a little early to pick up my daughter, but I wanted to just mention what a great event it was. Ebony Clemens, Jubilate, Andra Donnell, Janetta Everett, Ann Garvey, Angela Green, Venus Lee, Dr. K. Monk Morgan, Terry Rice, LaFerris Risby, Dr. Jamila Watson Thompson, and Lily Wu were all awarded as Shine Award honorees. And it was just a great way to celebrate women. I am glad that there are 2 women up here on this board now, and hopefully we'll see that we are turning the tide with women in leadership in all parts of our community. So I am thankful to have been a part of that yesterday. Priska Barnes runs Storytime Village, and it is an incredible resource for literacy in our community. So just wanted to mention that. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, while we're talking about women leaders, Commissioner Meitzner, Commissioner Lopez, and I had an opportunity to go and listen to 4 great women leaders of our community: Angela Buckner, Bridget Gordon, Nikki Epley, Linda Hargrove. All were talking about how that they became leaders, and a lot of it, their leadership came through the athletics. And we have an opportunity right here in Sedgwick County now to support the future leaders of our community and across the United States because the Women's NCAA is coming to Sedgwick County in Trust Bank Arena. And so we're going to have an opportunity to see at least one of those teams. So one of them is going to go to the Final Four. So we're going to see some great basketball for one thing. We're going to see future leaders that are out there on the court that we can watch. So the tickets go on sale on the 19th. I hope that I've already asked Lindsay to talk with the commissioners and the rest of the staff to see if we want to buy a block of tickets of some sort. And I'm ready. They cost for 2 tickets $90 for all the games. So if any of the commissioners are interested, get with Lindsay and she'll get us a block of tickets, and it'll be kind of fun to go as a group. And so any of the staff that's interested in that also, it's a great opportunity, and it shows the NCAA that Sedgwick County is a basketball community, and we want to continue bringing the NCAA championship games to the Entrust Bank Arena. So we need the support of the community. We've had great support in the past. I think we'll have great support at this time, but I want to be a cheerleader to this event. So please make sure that on the 19th you start buying tickets and go to the game. $90 for 2 tickets. You can't hardly beat that. The other thing that I'd like to briefly discuss is Commissioner Lopez and I were on the call with the hospitals on Monday. And the numbers are down. 47, I think, is what the total hospitalization that we had at that time. They had 11 in ICU and 1 on vent. So we're back green on the hospitals. As a matter of fact, Via Christi said that their ICU now has patients in it that don't have COVID. So it's moving in the right direction. If you look at our positivity rate, it's right at 2% today. So I think we need to have a discussion. First of all, we're no longer going to have the Monday meetings unless something changes. So they will send us an email if there's some reason that we need to have a meeting on Monday, but we're no longer going to have those meetings because the hospitals are feeling fairly comfortable. With our positivity rate where it's at right now, I guess the question that I've got, and maybe we need to bring it up to a staff meeting so you can discuss it further when everybody has an opportunity to think through it. But do we need to even keep the dashboard up at this point in time? So I'd like the commissioners to think through that. I don't want any rash decisions at this point in time, but if we would like to take it down, maybe we need to discuss that a little further. Commissioner Howell, do you have a comment?
Yeah, just again, I mentioned that last Wednesday, and some people, think that I'm anti-data. That's absolutely not true. I'm very pro-data. I love data. I mean, data really makes me conclude things. I'm driven by data, so it's not about being anti-data at all. I just think that the data to talk about 2 years, the 2-year anniversary is about to come up here. I guess I'm wondering, does it cost money to host this? We have someone who has to pay attention to the numbers and have to keep track of the numbers and has to update the website. And I know that the media continues to talk about the numbers every single day, but the numbers are so low. In fact, I don't think they're even accurate anymore. The numbers really aren't accurate because we have home testing now. The majority of vaccines are being handled in the private sector, not through Sedgwick County. The majority of testing, I think, is happening in the private sector, on it goes. And so I don't think our numbers are even accurate, and I question the value of the dashboard. It's not that I'm anti-data. I just think it costs money for someone to maintain that. We have to pay attention to it, and I don't think it has any value at this point. If we have another variant shows up and suddenly we have a surge in the community, I think we have the software. I'm not suggesting we would actually get rid of the tool. I just don't think there's value in having it updated every single day when the numbers are so low. And I'll argue that it's historical. We have 2 years worth of data showing, and the numbers today are so incredibly low, they're not really valuable in terms of making any policy choices today. And I do think there's a small cost to the taxpayer. So I would actually argue I think it is time to take it down. Just, I guess, more of a comment. Thank you, Chairman.
Well, thank you. And it goes along kind of with Tim's going to come and brief us here in the future on where we're at with the vaccine clinic. Do we need to continue that when there's numerous places where people can get the vaccine, the testing facility? There's a lot of things that are changing as a result of where we're at today that where we weren't before. So these are all decisions we need to make in the future, but I'm not ready to make them today. I want to make sure that the staff gives us a good recommendation. Hey, anything else under other? Seeing nothing, we have no executive session required today. And does anything else need to come before the board? Seeing nothing, thank you all for your attendance. We're adjourned.
My brain is still a little foggy from post-COVID.
These are open. Yeah. COVID break.